sorry. We have a helicopter above us and an FBI van coming in. Say again, please. This is the FBI. I think this is the FBI command van or some type of a command van. The ATF command van just pulled in just a moment ago, getting an escort by Austin police. Let's see here as it gets a little closer to us. This is the second ATF van that has pulled in here a moment ago. The first one's more of a tactical on-scene type thing. This is the first one's a little more of a response type van where evidence collection teams are usually on board. This is more of a command van where they can process the scene, get a better idea of what's going on. Now, we have been pushed back, as you've probably heard, a little ways because of the concern and the fear there might be a second device down there that is unexploded. We're going to try to move our camera over just a little more in the street here so you can see us. The street is blocked, so it's safe for us to move over here. But even as we've been here, we got here 7:45 or so. We're on the north side, just south of Davis on Brody here. Even as we have been here, multiple FBI evidence collection teams have pulled in here. I'd count at least a half dozen or so trucks that came in here. This is the second ATF command type van we've seen pull in here as well too. So the scene has certainly shifted from the airport that we watched this morning to over here on the southwest side of the city. And you know, who knows what's going to happen next. Just a real quick thing to point out though, just before this happened, about 7 o'clock tonight, I was talking to Danny Deffenbaugh. He's a former FBI bomb tech. He's based out of Dallas up north there. But he was telling me, you know, two real headlines that came out of what happened earlier today before this happened, regardless of whether there's another bombing too. Two big headlines. The first is getting an unexploded device, the one at the airport today, and if there's a second one down here. Getting an unexploded device is a tremendous asset to this case here. It can lend a lot of information about bomb construction, about materials used, potentially DNA, potentially fingerprints, all kinds of things. So if there's one from the airport earlier today, which is a huge clue, and a second one down here potentially, the FBI and the ATF, which is the lead agency here, is getting a lot more information and hopefully getting a lot closer to potentially identifying who might be behind this. The second thing Danny Deffenbaugh, that former FBI agent, was talking about with us this evening about 7 o'clock is for the bomber to use a delivery method like FedEx or whatever other method that he or she might have used, that shows that the bomber is potentially targeting specific individuals. The items left on the porch of the house can be picked up by anybody. The items that were, excuse me, there's another helicopter above me here too. The items that were, the tripwire that was used Sunday night, that could be tripped by anybody, but to have a specific bomb that was, excuse me guys, a specific bomb that was sent to somebody to an address, whether indeed it was a real address or not, that is something they haven't seen before, individuals being targeted by this. For the first time, as I've been aware here too, the law enforcement has a helicopter circling this too. But you know guys, this is just another tough scene to happen here in this city. But the good news is, from an investigative standpoint, there is at least one, potentially two now tonight, unexploded devices that investigators can now dissect, pick apart, and see what's inside to hopefully identify a little more about what's going on. This is from the ATF. It says breaking. This is a tweet I'm just now looking at. ATF responded to a reported incident in 9800 block of Brody Lane. It was not a package bomb. An incendiary device was located. One person injured. At this time, it does not appear to be related to the package bomb murders. So if that's the case, I'm here with Rebecca Lopez, a reporter from our station up in Dallas, who is sharing this information with me. Rebecca, we're on KVU right now, KVU News. This is a big development that ATF headquarters is tweeting out right now.
It is a huge development because this is a response that you would expect to see, obviously, if there was an actual package bomb. But, you know, right now, obviously, they don't know. I mean, this bomber has changed his MO a few times. I mean, maybe he's changed his pattern again. He's changed it twice already. So at this point, though, they're saying it does not appear to be related. I don't know what information they have at this point that it's not. Obviously, the others all contained nails, apparently, according to our sources. According to witnesses, according to what we've seen, they've been packages that they have been tweeting out all day, the ATF out of the Houston office as well, and it appears that right now they're saying that it is not related. That's a big development.
Well, it's a huge development. This is from the ATF HQ, ATF headquarters Twitter account 2 minutes ago. It was not a package bomb. An incendiary device was located, one person injured. At this time, it does not appear to be related. What does that mean? Is this a copycat, Rebecca?
It's hard to tell at this time, but that does coincide with what one of the eyewitnesses told us a little while ago, that they did see an ambulance and that the ambulance was going to a hospital here nearby. I also had spoken with a friend at St. David's Medical Hospital here in Austin, and they were told to be on high alert for patients. But going back to this tweet, that is really quick for them to say that, to put that out. In the past, in the last ones, they've waited a long time before they confirmed whether or not they were in fact related, and right now they are saying that it's not. That's pretty quick.
It is very quick. Here, we have the hazmat team from Austin Fire pulling up here too. That was an FBI van that was in front of them. This is another FBI van that's passing as we speak here too. So this is a huge development from the ATF, and it's curious how quickly they shared this information that's getting a lot of retweets right now. So that certainly raises a question, guys, whether this might be a copycat, since the ATF says this is not related to the package bomb murders.
That is a major development. An incendiary device, not a bomb in that area, and they have no reason to believe it's related to the previous package bombs. Whatever you call it, Jason, it is causing a palpable fear in that community. You spoke with some people there because there's an apartment complex right around that area. I mean, these people are scared to death about this situation out there.
No doubt they're scared to death. I'm hoping to get another guy here in just a moment who's talking to a colleague of mine here too. This is from the Austin Police Department right now. This is Austin Police tweeting this out. There was no package explosion here on Brody Lane. Items inside the package was not a bomb, rather an incendiary device. At this time, we have no reason to believe this incident is related to previous package bombs. Now that's
pretty quick too.
That's quick, and it's certainly something that law enforcement and the community has been concerned about. I don't want to say this is a copycat, but the bottom line is we've had another device detonate here, incendiary, whatever you want to call it. Something else has happened, and if it's not related, this tells me it's a copycat.
Yeah, that's what it appears to be. I mean, if it's not related, then somebody is trying to continue to terrorize in other ways, and that is very scary, and they do worry about those things. I've covered numerous cases where there have been copycat killers, copycat bombers, and so that could be the case. It's very quick that they put this out to say it is not a package. At this point, we do not think it's related. And then the past, again, like we mentioned earlier, they've taken hours and hours to say whether or not they believed it was related.
Let me ask you this, and just to refresh here, guys. This is Rebecca Lopez, a reporter from our sister station in Dallas. She's covered law enforcement for 2 decades. Why would they share this information so quickly, Rebecca?
They're trying to calm people down. They're trying to calm the public. That would be what I'm thinking, is that they're trying to calm the public. But there's also a concern from the residents out here. They're afraid. I mean, I was talking to people. They're thinking that there might be a second bomb. People are worried. They're concerned, and so this is probably their way of saying, everybody calm down. We don't think it's related.
All right, guys, back to you. We'll get some more out here and update in a moment.
Jason and Rebecca, I just want to ask you, because you all did show us video of the ATF vehicle heading, it looked like, into the scene. So even after we saw this tweet, were they heading in or out from that area?
I believe you said they were heading in.
No, you're looking at the scene down there, so everyone is physically driving in the scene. This is another, it looks to me like FBI Suburban that's heading into the scene. Everyone's heading into the scene. There's still more response. Here we are, an hour later, and there's still more emergency response coming into here.
All right, Jason and Rebecca, thank you very much. We do have, I believe, a
man named Johnny
who drove by this scene when the explosion, and now we've heard maybe an incendiary device somehow went off.
So let's talk about the differences that may.
I think we have.
I'm sorry. Pardon
me.
Let's
get Johnny on the phone first. Johnny, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
What did you notice when you drove by this area?
So I live in that area, Shady Hollow, and I was at the intersection of Slaughter and Brody when I saw a couple emergency vehicles turning north on Brody, just sitting at that intersection. Then we drove through and then noticed multiple ambulances and cop cars. Just happened to pull into a parking lot to go to an ATM, and multiple vehicles kept coming and coming. I'd say 50 probably. And then we looked back at the Brody and Slaughter intersection and saw a state trooper car was on fire, had gone up in flames. And so we were kind of caught in between the Goodwill and that intersection, just looking at a pretty chaotic scene.
That is the first we're certainly hearing of a reported state trooper car on fire. We will check that out to see, but that has not been confirmed by any of the authorities as of yet. When you see all this happening and knowing what's been going on in our city for the last month, what's running through your mind? What do you think you're witnessing at that moment?
I definitely thought it was another explosion, and just based on what had happened and the number of vehicles that were responding. The helicopters were up above, and there were many unmarked vehicles coming in quickly, and my mind definitely went there initially.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Johnny.
Tony, do you want to report what you just have heard?
Yeah, I excuse me, have gotten similar information that there may be a law enforcement car of some kind that is on fire at or near this location. That is what is being told to me by an official right now. But who knows how that's connected either. But it sounds like at a minimum, there is a lot of activity happening in this location. So we have been talking about the speed with which ATF is distributing information that they do not believe at this point that this is related to the package bombs. And how they are doing these determinations is once they've had an explosion, is they're actually going to the scene and looking at the remnants of that. And what authorities have said so far is that the remnants of the devices are all similar. And so that is how they have kind of put together that they believe that this was one operator who was doing this. I'm trying to reach people right now who can possibly help clarify what exactly is now happening at this location.
Yeah, because this is really a new development that we're just hearing. It's just coming in and out from two different sources. Johnny, the witness who drove by it and said that he saw what he thought to be a state trooper car on fire, and then your source telling you that a vehicle of some sort was indeed on fire.
Here, we're looking now live at this picture. You see one of the officers there pulling up the crime scene tape, so they appear to be moving some vehicles apparently out of that area, or maybe at least lessening the span that they did evacuate earlier tonight.
But to be clear, authorities very much, at least early on, did say they were responding to a call for an explosion. That was according to emergency responders. We all, of course, know and understand how information can change and evolve. And that may be what is in fact happening tonight.
Well, and this is obvious. I mean, this is a heightened alert situation for Austin. So any kind of report of this is going to trigger this kind of response, I think, right now.
And I was actually texting with someone who was out at the scene, and they are telling me now that it did look like a car was on fire.
Well, this is
there's an image right there.
Yeah,
right here.
This is from a viewer that sent us this image. They were actually out at the Brody Lane site when this explosion took place.
Hard to make out what sort of vehicle that is. It almost does look like there's a, who's that person in the front there? Is that that's an authority of some kind, a trooper or somebody?
It looks like a trooper in the front of the car.
Yeah, and Johnny, our witness, said that he thought it was a trooper's vehicle. So we don't want to make any assumptions, of course, but
I think it brings up a good point, Tony. Maybe you can talk a little bit about this, is that, you know, these officers are working day and night to try to solve this crime, and they are being put in harm's way anytime any kind of suspicious package is reported to them.
And there's a sense of vigilance and hypervigilance that is, you know, obviously understandable by authorities who are caught in this investigation, who are working on this investigation. But again, we're still trying to figure out what exactly is happening at this location. But let's just walk people through in the past half hour or so, what we've understood. Number one is that around, what was it, 7:15, 7:20, emergency responders sent a tweet out from their accounts that they were responding to the 9600 block of Brody Lane, that's in South Austin, to investigate or to respond to reports of an explosion. Now, about 45 minutes to an hour later, authorities are saying that they do not believe that this is in fact connected to the previous incidents that we've been seeing. So we're frankly unsure of what is happening at this time. I do want to say, though, certainly a car fire can cause an explosion because of the detonation of the gasoline that's in the car.
But yeah, and also we do know that we're being told at least that a man in his 30s, an employee of Goodwill, was injured. And so it does make you wonder the connection between the vehicle and the man from the Goodwill. You know, I don't know that area well enough to know where that is in relation to the CVS that was in that picture that we were showing. We're going to look and see if we can find that. But, you know, I guess it's even possible that there could have been a couple of things going on. That the car fire had nothing to do with what they were initially there for. We just don't know at this point.
So I'm going to do this. I'm going to step away and again try to get some further clarification on what officials think is happening right now at this location.
Okay. Once again, there's the picture of a vehicle. And Quita, you said that you had contact with somebody who said something similar.
Somebody had sent us some video. They were actually driving by the location at the time when they saw the smoke and what happened, and they sent it. So we're going to hopefully be able to see what video they were able to get.
Okay,
possibly the same perspective, same scene from a different perspective.
Right. Just so you know, this CVS is just down the street, not even a block away from the Goodwill. Right there at the corner of Slaughter and Brody Lane. Okay. Goodwill is up a little bit north of that, just to give you an idea of the perspective there. So again, we don't know how these two situations may be connected, if they are in fact connected in any way, but obviously a heightened sense of concern in the Austin area when we hear about any possible explosion.
And that's right. And just to sort of update you on everything, if you're just joining us or following along, an explosion in the, I believe, 9600 block or 9800 block of Brody Lane this afternoon. And in the beginning, it had been thought to have been some sort of a package bomb. Now, we're being told that the items inside the package was not a bomb. It was an incendiary device.
Which just means a device that can cause a fire, for folks who are kind of curious about that.
And at this time, Austin police and investigators have no reason to believe. This is the video of the person who was driving by. And you can see the smoke. It looks like the trooper was trying to help.
Yeah, you know, we'd have to look at it in slower motion, I guess, to try to get a shot of that vehicle that's on fire. I still couldn't make out on the first pass whether or not that vehicle was an authorities vehicle right here.
It looks like a Dodge Charger.
Albert's watching it and says it's a Dodge Charger that looks like it has smoke around it.
Looks
so
like a DPS vehicle.
DPS vehicle. Okay, that would jive with what our witness told us.
And it looks like there's a police car right in front of that, and then another trooper car behind it. So I mean, it would make sense that.
So the big headline here too is that this is. Unlike what authorities may have thought when this first began to unfold at 7:15, 7:20, they do not believe that this is connected to all of the bombings that we've had going on in and around our city since the beginning of the month. Now, is that good news or is that bad news? Because we don't know if this is a copycat type event, and certainly it's not copying the mode that we have seen in others.
So what's interesting, though, about an incendiary device, if this, in fact, is changing, according to Al Tompkins from the Poynter Institute, incendiary devices are designed to start fires or destroy sensitive equipment using fire with materials such as thermite, magnesium powder, chlorine, trifluoride, or white phosphorus. So just some background information there that I'm sure the FBI and the ATF are going to be looking at, too, just to determine if there is any link between all of this.
So we're not talking about those explosions that some of these other events have had, where there were nuts and bolts and nails and glass that were meant to be projectiles to hurt and to kill people. This would be a much different type of device.
And I know that video, that CVS that you saw in that video, that is actually across and down Brody from the Goodwill. So it's just, there's a fire, there's a car fire here. There's just a lot going on.
That's what we're still digging to find out, is what the connection between that 30-something-year-old guy at the Goodwill who was injured is to this. If there is a connection at all, we just don't know. This is the scene right there that we're looking at live.
Right. And I know Austin Police are planning to update all of us, the media, the public, on what is going on out there tonight.
I think it's a good reminder for anyone, you know, to report anything that you see. Austin Police, FBI, and the ATF have been encouraging people to send tips if you notice anything suspicious. 512-472-8477. There is a $115,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. Any tip can be significant. It's that important. And we're seeing tonight that the officers that have been called in here to Austin take these tips seriously. They want to get to the bottom of this. They want to solve this crime, and they don't want anyone else to be hurt.
The mayor himself said recently, I believe it was yesterday, that they do not want anybody to be concerned about tying up the lines and about overloading authorities with tips or with concerns about a package or something. Bring it on, call them in, because that's what they're here for. And the more that they get, the safer they're able to keep people, and then possibly the closer they are to solving this case. So anything as insignificant as you think it might be could be helpful.
That's right. See something, say something. And it's not just in Austin itself. I know people in Round Rock, Cedar Park, all of the areas around Austin, they're also encouraged, if they see something suspicious, to call their law enforcement officials. I know that people in Williamson County have been calling in as well, but they are following each and every single lead that they have been getting, because they want this to stop.
Okay, so if you are just joining us, we've got, let's try to catch up as much as we can on this developing situation. At around 7:15, 7:20 tonight, authorities put out the word that they were on the scene of another explosion within the city of Austin. And this would be near the Goodwill, which is on Brody near Slaughter. We have since learned that this was not an explosion. It was an incendiary device, a device meant to cause a fire and destroy something. And it was much different in its effects and the way that it was put together than all of these explosions that we've been seeing since the beginning of the month. So whereas in the beginning they thought that it was connected, they do not think any longer that this is connected to the explosions we've had. A man in his 30s, said to be a Goodwill employee, although we're hearing a little back and forth on that, whether or not he was an employee or just somebody at the Goodwill, was injured, arms and hands, taken to the hospital, serious injuries, but it is expected to be okay. This is a live look at that scene right there. I believe it's pointing down Brody towards that scene. And so then after that, we have this information with the vehicle.
Right. We really are just honestly waiting for Austin Police, ATF, FBI to give us an update on what they have discovered, what they've found out there. And I know right now they are saying that it does not look like this incident is connected to the package bombs and the tripwire explosion.
I will say Austin Police did just tweet out a moment ago they are setting up a media staging point near this scene in hopes of providing some updated information to people here. Understandably, officers working around the clock to get this information to people as quickly as possible, but still an active crime scene there. As we have seen, this is the 6th incident since March 2nd, all of this spanning over 18 days here in Austin. So there's a heightened sense of activity, of concern in the Austin area. And I know as a parent, I know we all talk about it. You, Quita, you have nieces and nephews. Mike, you've got kids. it's difficult because you want your kids. This is the 5th safest city in the country. And I think it's a good reminder to people to hear that occasionally. So this is not what we expect in Austin. And it's tough to talk to your kids about looking at packages when they come to the door and don't touch anything, get me or, you know, Dad to look at it. But these are the real conversations happening in families across this area right now, because we have to have them. And like you were saying, you don't want your children to live in fear for sure, but you do want them to take precautions. And it's unfortunate that we're at a situation where you can't just pick up a package at your front door. We got packages at my house, and my daughter was talking about whether or not we should pick it up, and I'm glad that she did. You know, it's just unfortunate that it's come to that. Well, we even hear of schools increasing their security around. We've heard they've
and
added
some apartment
officers.
Buildings are not taking package deliveries in right now.
Yeah,
Right.
as a safety precaution.
That's how we're living here in Austin right now.
So we hope that with this this press briefing that we're going to be getting, they're setting that up now. We're hoping that will clarify a lot of the issues. We have that video. I wonder if we were able to pull that video up again of the vehicle that we had there.
Oh,
Okay.
we actually have an interview right now that we're going to play for you.
Oh, this is Jerry Davis, the CEO.
One of our employees saw something unusual that looked like a pipe in one of our donation boxes. Somebody apparently donated this to us, and contacted his supervisor, said he was uncomfortable with it, started to take it out, and apparently it was dropped and blew up. So that's what I know. I'm not 100% sure that everything I just said is true, but I do know that it was an object he was uncomfortable with, looked like a pipe, started to take it outside, and I understand it exploded.
How do we know that employee obviously injured at this point?
Right. It was one of our workers. He got transported to a nearby hospital, South Austin. From what I understand, it wasn't life-threatening, and that he's doing all right.
Do you know how long he'd been working there?
No, I'm not sure. I'm not even sure of his name at this point. I think I know, but I'm not sure.
Doesn't want to say.
So that was the CEO of Goodwill saying that, and he stressed that he doesn't have everything quite confirmed, but that this employee had a pipe-type object that he felt uncomfortable with, and that was what went off in some fashion. We're talking about an incendiary device. See, so this is where, let's throw that video again of that vehicle that a viewer was kind enough to send in. This is where we'll need the authorities to fill in the blanks. Is that pipe that the CEO was talking about that injured the Goodwill worker connected to this incident here, which is just down the road from the Goodwill, but that is what appears to be a DPS vehicle smoking, if not on fire. So
I mean, we won't know what is connected with what until we hear from authorities, and they are getting ready to brief the media out at that location. And I know there are so many questions, not just from us, but just from the public as well. I mean, it's frightening.
Well, in that area there, our reporters on the scene were speaking with people who live in that area, and there's an apartment complex right around where that Goodwill is, where that CVS with that vehicle we just saw, and these people. Can you imagine the fear that they're feeling tonight?
Yeah, the Bell Austin Southwest Apartments is just around the corner from that. And there's a lot of businesses there. I mean, there's several restaurants. There are several banks, the CVS, obviously. There's a park, which I would imagine on a night like tonight, it was pretty busy with families because it was a warm spring night here in Austin. And I think that's the good news in all of this, I think, again, is that police are quickly kind of determining what they have and what they're learning from these situations. They're getting the information out quickly to people to hopefully, allay some of the fears, but also to encourage the vigilance and to encourage people to make reports to officers.
And we have Jenny Lee in our newsroom right now. She has some developments in this breaking news story. Jenny, what can you tell us tonight?
Yeah, just a quick update to pass along because of this explosion that happened in South Austin. Austin police have evacuated the Randalls at 9911 Brody Lane. They've evacuated all the customers and employees. I just got off the phone with the last employee there who said that Randalls is closed for the night. So if you have any plans of going to the Randalls grocery store at 9911 Brody Lane, you need to find another grocery store to go to. Austin police evacuated everyone from that store because of that explosion that happened just down the street. So this just not pertained or contained to that small area. They're evacuating, I'm assuming, to all the nearby businesses just as a safety precaution. As you mentioned, there could be a second device. They're not taking any chances. They've moved the media back. That you just never know. You know, there's my law enforcement sources tell me they're in other bombing situations. You know, there's one incident, and that second incident could be the main focus. So they have to be very careful. Again, the Randalls grocery store at 9911 Brody Lane evacuated. Austin police just finished that, and the last employee has left that store. Back to you guys.
Jenny, thank you so much. And I know something that's really confused some people, a lot of people. What is an incendiary device? Is it a bomb? What is it?
Yeah, what's the difference between a bomb and an incendiary device? Jason Puckett has been in our newsroom working with our Verified team to kind of set that straight for us. I think that he is working on that. I thought that he was ready with it. We're not quite ready with it.
He'll be back.
He'll be back, just making sure that we're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. Now, you know what Jenny said.
We did report earlier that, I mean, an incendiary device is something that will set fire to something and potentially destroy evidence and materials. So
versus something like in these other things that had projectiles that as the nuts and bolts and the glass and things like that. Now this is a map because we're getting a handle on the situation here, and Albert Ramon's kind enough to help us out with a map to show us. So there's the Goodwill store, 9600 block of Brody Lane, and that is where you just heard the CEO of Goodwill talk about an employee, a man in his 30s, had taken in a donation. It looked like a pipe-like device. He was uncomfortable with it. Something happened. It went off or caught on fire or something. It caused him to have injuries to his hands and to his arms. He is expected to be okay. Just down the road there to, I guess, what is that, the south of the Goodwill, is the CVS, and that is the scene of where we have been showing you video of a vehicle, perhaps a DPS vehicle, that looked to be on fire or that was at least smoking. Here's that video coming up, and you can see the CVS approaching in the background, the smoke in the foreground with a vehicle there. Now, we're still trying to determine, as we gather the information, what the connection between that supposed pipe device and that car is, if there's a connection.
I will tell you there's an update now from Goodwill as well. They are closing all of the stores out of an abundance of caution for their team and their customers, as their team member is being treated for non-life-threatening injuries after what happened tonight in South Austin. So again, the Goodwill stores in the Austin area will remain closed out of caution for customers and employees.
Which, as you said earlier, the Salvation Army had already taken a precaution, not taking in donations, that they had put that out on Twitter.
Right,
that they
and some apartment complexes, they've stopped taking in package deliveries at this time. They've been sending out messages and notices to the people who live in those apartments, just saying, hey, we're not taking them in. Everyone is trying to use an abundance of caution during this time.
Better to be safe than sorry. And when Jenny's talking about I mean, just think about all the stores that are on there, the Randalls down the road there, and if you don't know exactly what's going on, and you see this scene here that we're looking at live on Brody Lane, you know, it sounds pretty responsible for the grocery store maybe to close its doors until we can all get a handle on what's happening over there. I want to let you know that, again, that we are expecting a media briefing to give us more information on what exactly is going on, what, if any, connection is going on between these two incidences in that area.
Jason Whiteley from our sister station at WFAA is also down there on the scene. He is just tweeting out that he spoke with a man who was at that location when it happened, and it sounded like a tire popping when the device went off at the Goodwill store off Brody Lane in Southwest Austin. So again, still getting some updated information from people who witnessed or were in the area when this happened.
And you know, I know police are saying that this incident, it doesn't look like it's connected to the other bombs, but you know what? It's just ratcheting up the fear and the anger in this town, because this should not be happening in Austin. We love this town.
Okay, we're going to go to Jason Puckett. We had discussed about how he's working on verifying the difference between an incendiary device, which they're describing this here at this location tonight, and a bomb. What have you been able to find out, Jason?
Yeah, Mike and Quita, we talked about this a little earlier. This is the tweet that ATF HQ sent out that initially mentioned that incendiary device. Hopefully you can see it over here on the screen. So we looked it up a little bit here. The United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs basically defines incendiary weapons as any sort of weapon primarily designed to set fire to an object, and it excludes any sort of munition that has a penetration, blast, or fragmentation effect with an additional incendiary effect. So basically, to boil that down, as defined by the United Nations office, it's saying that an incendiary is purely meant to light something on fire in some sort of way, whereas an explosive has that other element of a fragmentation and explosion, some other object being sent out from there. Folks, we're out here verifying. Any questions you have, make sure you send them our way. Back to you guys for now in the studio.
Okay. All right, as Jason said, an incendiary device meant to start or cause a fire.
And that is certainly what it looks like we were witnessing with the DPS vehicle. It looked like it had been set on fire. Now, I don't know if that's the description, you know, that they're using for both of these devices, the whatever was at the Goodwill and this here with the vehicle, but you know, once again, it's just we just have to wait to have them fill in the blanks. They may be still trying to figure out exactly what it is and if there's any connection between them.
Well, and again, still a lot of officers remain in this area, again, along Slaughter and Brody Lane. And for people who are not familiar with that part of Southwest Austin, it is a busy area. There's a lot of businesses, a lot of traffic this time of day down there. Even that Goodwill store is typically pretty busy on a Tuesday night, is senior night.
And the Randalls.
And the Randalls grocery store that was just evacuated by officers there. There's a Juiceland, there's a Bush's Chicken, a Sonic, a Starbucks, all in and around that area.
So, I mean, when you take a look at the police presence out there, the federal agent presence out in that area, it's going to be best if people just completely stay away and avoid it.
You know, I want to pass this along. Our producer's telling us now that we're finding out that that car fire we've been talking about is not related. Is not related to what we're talking about.
Well, in fact, someone just reported to me that they were at the Sonic across the street from Goodwill, and the DPS car on fire occurred after the response. So they don't think it is connected in any way. It may have just happened after the fact. Maybe a car overheated. You know, in a lot of those cases, the officers are running their cars when they're sitting in those areas, and their engines stay on.
And that's excellent news. That's we know now. Good. That's not connected.
It tells you the heightened state that we are all in, you know, with seeing anything like this and assuming that it has to have some sort of nefarious motive behind it, other than maybe a car overheating or something like that. But
I mean, it goes right into the see something, say something.
Right, and you never want to discourage that in cases like this. So then that sharpens our focus then of what we're talking about. As we're learning this information, we can rule out that vehicle, and now we can focus just on what that CEO of Goodwill was telling us about the incident there, which is that it was a bomb-like device that an employee, a man in his 30s, took in the donation area, got nervous about, and apparently with good cause, because it went off in some fashion and injured his hands and his arms.
And again, confirming that the reports of the car fire is completely separate from the incident that they were responding to. That just into our newsroom moments ago. So that's the good news in that had nothing to do with it.
And we look at all of this, we are fearful, we're stressed about this, but during this time we also can't forget the people who were truly affected, the victims of what's going on here in Austin, these bombings. 39-year-old Anthony House killed on his front porch, picking up a package just like any other ordinary day. Leaves behind a wife and an 8-year-old daughter. 17-year-old Draylon Mason, an honor student, an incredibly gifted musician. This young man was on his way to the UT Butler School of Music. His friends describe him as a bright and shining light. He had an incredible future ahead of him, snuffed out in an instant. His mom left seriously injured inside their own home.
And then on that very same day, the 75-year-old woman who is still battling her injuries from a separate bombing that happened within 5 hours of that first one that killed the teenager.
Right, down on
Hope
Galindo Street.
And then we had the two young 20-year-old men who were injured just this weekend after walking by. I mean, a device that kind of changed the focus of this investigation because it included a tripwire, and they happened to be walking by, and it set the device off. And
now we're talking tripwires, not just packages. And then when you move from that incident on Sunday, those two men, by the way, those two young men were injured, but we understand that they are going to be okay and may have even been released from the hospital. So that's good news there. But then when you move on to the next, today it just it becomes a blur with everything that's happened. And we learned from what happened in Schertz, Texas, outside of San Antonio, that now this device that went off, that injured somebody, that authorities do believe is connected to these others, that this person or these people have been using delivery services, because this was a FedEx facility. So that just adds another a wrinkle to this already complicated investigation.
You know, a lot of those mail delivery services have extremely tight security in this day and age. They use sophisticated devices to examine packages as they come into those facilities. So to find out that a package could get through all of those security measures and still injure an employee is frightening for a lot of the people who work there. I know we've heard from several drivers today who are concerned about delivering these packages. Also heard from homeowners who are grateful for the Postal Service employees who actually knock on their door to make sure that they actually ordered something to make sure that the packages were in fact intended for them.
Well, we've been mentioning this throughout our live coverage here, but
to the car fire,
I was wondering about
which we were
that.
showing,
Yeah.
not a second device.
So
excellent.
But you know, and this happens when you've got a frantic scene like this, where people are trying to piece together what's happening, and then you're getting eyewitness accounts and everything. You just have to. Authorities have to gather up all the information and kind of sparse it out and figure out what's what. And so that's what they're doing. And I'm sorry if we're passing along information that doesn't turn out to pan out, but we're reporting what they're telling us, and we give them leeway as they're trying to figure out the scope of what's going on out there.
Good news for folks. Bowie High School's reverse evacuation has just been lifted. So those folks who were at that bond meeting, they are now allowed to leave.
It does appear that the scene is becoming more relaxed. As we saw a little bit earlier, they were taking down some crime tape, and since this has been lifted at Bowie, then perhaps the scene is more relaxed and under control.
Right, but of course the Randall's at 9911 Brody Lane has been closed for the rest of the night, so no one needs to go there. And just police are still saying, please stay away from this area while they continue to investigate this latest incident.
Right.
Obviously, there is a heightened sense of urgency by Austin officials, the FBI, ATF, as hundreds of investigators are in town investigating the series of package bombings that have happened since March 2nd here in Austin, ranging all across Austin, East Austin and down into Southwest Austin and down into Schertz earlier today, as we saw a package explode that was intended to be sent to the Austin area.
This is a live look at the scene there as we're awaiting the authorities to set up a command post, so to speak, for the media on Slaughter to kind of give us an update on what they found out. It looks like it's a live scene of it. You can see the microphones on the stand waiting for them to come out, and the various reporters waiting for them to come out and speak about it. Obviously, a lot of questions tonight.
And the thing about this is, I know a lot of people across the country are still just hearing about what's happening here in Austin. They're shocked, they're surprised. They say, hey, there hasn't been a lot of media about this. I think a lot of people here in Austin and Central Texas would tend to disagree. We've been covering this and trying to keep people updated and give them as much information as possible from the very beginning when all of this first started. And now we have reporters from actually all over the country, from across the world here in Austin, covering the story.
And some of the frustration that came out early on when we had the first 3 package bombs, unrelated to what's happening here tonight, was that, you know, authorities weren't being descriptive enough about, well, what was on the package, what the package looked like, who did it come from, who was it going to. But, you know, they have to, and I'm sure that we've all heard of this, you have to withhold information so that when you do have a suspect or suspects, that there has to be information that they're familiar with that they could not have gotten through the media. So it's a fine line between alerting the public and trying to maintain the integrity of the investigation.
Exactly, and we're getting word now. Officer Nathan Blake with the Austin Police Department, he is saying that the press conference will happen before 10 p.m. tonight. So not a
kind of a wide swath,
a very wide swath of time to wait for this press conference, but he say it will happen before 10 p.m. tonight.
Well, I'm sure, and from their perspective, they've got a lot of cooks in the kitchen, a lot of agencies working on this, and they want to pass the proper information on.
Right,
and,
they want to make sure that they get all the information that they need and that it's all the correct information to hand out to us and over to the public. So hopefully people will be able to calm their fears a little bit, because I know, especially in Southwest Austin, in that particular area right now, people are afraid. People are scared.
And, you know, we had talked about the Tony Plohetsky, our reporter here at KVU, and also with the Austin American Statesman, and talked a little bit about you know, whether authorities, his sources, believe a copycat could be at play in some of these. And while they don't want to take that off the table, they don't believe that this is as viable, I guess, of a scenario as the possibility that it's a lone person or maybe a person or two working together on some of these cases.
Okay.
So
you know
it'll be interesting. I know the question will be asked tonight when, with this incendiary device at the Goodwill, the question will be asked, do you think it's a copycat? So it'll be interesting to hear what the authorities say about that.
And I'd actually like to take a look at the map that shows where each of the explosions happened over the past, 17, 18 days. Because when you look at it, it just seems to make a circle.
Yeah, we had that map. We were trying to pull that map up after we show this video, but the map of the sites of all of the attacks, and it was kind of going in the point I think you were making was that it was going in a clockwise position. It was going, you know, as a clock would travel, 1, 2, 3, the attacks, and that may have some significance.
And we spoke with Fred Burton about that yesterday. We actually had a long conversation with him about this, and he had quite a bit to say about just how all of this actually is coming together now.
Have a couple of updates for people. We are hearing along on Twitter that the device that was found at the Brody location Goodwill store was possibly a flare, which would make sense. That would be an incendiary device.
And he said it was like a pipe-like substance.
That someone did not dispose of properly. And also someone tweeting out that their FedEx delivery man knocked on the door and stayed for a signature, that they have been told not to just drop off packages and leave. So possible change in policy for some of these package delivery services, which will change the way a lot of people do business. Because so many people are not home throughout the day, and that is when a lot of these packages get delivered. So we'll continue to see what may happen in the future to package delivery services in this area while this investigation continues to go on.
All right.
So I understand that we have Molly Oak, who we're looking at the live scene of where a press conference is about to happen. I believe this is on Slaughter near Brody. And Molly, are you joining us by phone?
Hey, Mike, yeah, I'm here. I'm actually behind the scenes just so we can keep our spot here while we wait for Austin Police Department to give us the update after another explosion happened in the Austin area. This one, of course, happening at Goodwill. We know that one employee has been hurt after the 6th explosion was reported here in Southwest Austin today. Now, when I was talking to some of the people over at Goodwill, one of the employees told me that he was actually just having a discussion with some of the other employees, saying that what they were going to do about all of these packages that kept coming through and exploding. They were talking about how they need to be more vigilant and things like that. And he says literally in the middle of that conversation, that is when he heard the explosion. That person that got hurt was a Goodwill employee. He was a man in his 30s. He was transferred over to St. David's, South Austin, with potentially serious injuries, but not expected to be life-threatening. Now, he said the Goodwill spokesperson told us that the victim was an employee who was looking through the donations, and then they also tweeted out, and I also spoke with one of the CEOs as well, that all locations will be closed following the explosions. That's all coming from CEO Jerry Davis. He says that the employee saw something unusual, kind of looked like a pipe, and he told the manager to say that really they didn't feel comfortable with it. Now, when that employee started to take it out, it dropped, and that's when the device blew up. Again, this is all according to Goodwill CEO Jerry Davis. We're going to keep staying here. We're waiting for Austin Police Department to give us more information, so stay with us on air, online, and of course on our mobile news app for the latest from this scene. Mike.
Okay, thanks so much. Molly Oak reporting behind the scenes for us there in Southwest Austin tonight. The latest scene to develop. And Tony Plahetsky is back with us now, too, with some more information that you've kind of managed to piece all of this together.
And I apologize that it has taken me a while. Obviously, the people I need to talk to are involved in an emergency response. Here's the deal, as I understand it. The reports of a second possible explosive device appear to be linked to a car fire from a law enforcement personnel who was at the scene or headed to the scene. So there is no second device. Authorities still, though, are on the scene of what they have described as an incendiary device that went off at this location. So again, 2 separate calls, a car fire, and then the reports of the incendiary device.
Possibly a flare? Is that what we're hearing?
Not heard. I mean, I've heard that, but I'm not sure about that. But the good news in all of this is that the reports of a second possible device and the fear of a second possible device, at least right now, appear to be not real.
And so that is good news.
That is good news.
The car on fire, then, they don't think that anyone set it on fire. It may have overheated or something.
May
but
have
it's
burned
not,
up its brakes. Who knows?
It's not a factor.
That's right. I'm told that the car fire is unrelated to whatever else is happening at or near this location. I haven't clarified with 100% certainty that the car fire is the result of someone who is heading to that scene, but that is what I'm being told. Again, the multiple 911 calls and the fears of a possible second device appear to be linked to a car fire and not an explosive device.
Tony, you have so many law enforcement contacts in this area, so many of them working feverishly to put this to rest, to put this investigation to rest. What are you hearing from them as far as the difficulty in trying to connect the dots? I mean, when you're working with all of these agencies, does that make it more complicated?
Well, certainly the size of the investigation is huge, but when you look at the volume of work that has to be done in a case like this, and in a case that continues to create scene after scene after scene, stretching from Austin to North Austin, Northeast Austin, to East Austin, then Southwest Austin, and now down to Schertz. Yes, it is a very multi-tiered, complex investigation.
Because who's the lead on this?
It is basically being co-led. It is being co-led by the Austin Police Department and the U.S. Justice Department ultimately, and I know that Justice Department officials in Washington, D.C. continue to get updated on the situation. But they are, from what I'm being told, working well together. You know, sometimes in complex investigations like this, you can get some tension between investigating agencies, but by all accounts, the work continues to go well for the parties involved.
But there's got to be pressure on these officers to fix this, to find the person responsible.
There is, and with each passing day and with each new incident, I think the pressure continues to mount. At the same time, I think you have people who are They haven't slept, and they are literally working around the clock. Much of the coordination is being done at a command center in the east side of Austin. That's where a lot of the strategic decisions are getting made. I know that there are regular briefings involving law enforcement personnel where they are able to compare notes, if you will, and exchange ideas. And again, I'm being told that the work that is going into this case really is unprecedented. It again has been described as a small army of people who are involved.
And we're seeing, you know, this is video I think from earlier, but we're seeing some of that now, just the huge onslaught of authorities that went to that site at Brody and Slaughter. And one of our reporters on the scene had mentioned, and it is an interesting thing to note, is that it was pretty fast that they got there and determined that this was not of the same MO as these other bombings that we've been seeing, that this was different, and they were quick to differentiate that. And that's unusual because you want to take your time and get it right. So this must have really been different. And I guess we figured too that our reporter stated they must have wanted to get it out to the community that, hey, this is an unrelated event.
Right. It must have been obviously different.
Yeah.
I mean, because what we have seen, for example, in the most recent explosion that happened at that FedEx facility in Schertz, authorities really took several hours before they were able to review a lot of the evidence and the forensic evidence there and determine that it did, in fact, look very similar.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because there is a fingerprint of sorts. I mean, when any of us mails a package, there's a trail that you leave. And so the hope today is the fact that there were multiple devices found, that there's some sort of a trail that leaves kind of, you know, cookie crumbs, if you so to speak, right?
Absolutely. And again, we know that FedEx, the company itself, and they have said it in their own statement, have given authorities a trove of information. And they were pretty specific about some of the things that they gave to law enforcement. And in fact, I believe that they have the name of the sender, or at least the person who identified themselves as the sender. So you can imagine that law enforcement continues to go through all of that information tonight, and will be working on it overnight as well. But yes, while it is unfortunate, anytime we see a recurrence of this, there is something of a benefit to law enforcement, because it does give more evidence. It does possibly provide more witnesses.
Thanks, Tony.
You bet.
We want to remind people there is a tip hotline. If you have information that may help lead to an arrest, there's a $115,000 reward on the line. The tip line, 512-472-8477. And again, if you see something suspicious, as we saw tonight, call 911. That's the best way to get help immediately.
That's right.
So for those of you who are just joining us now for almost a couple of hours now, since about 7:15 tonight, we've been following this breaking news of a Goodwill worker hurt from an incendiary device found at the Goodwill location, which was off of Slaughter and Brody Lane. Yeah, we've been here for a long time, pardon me. This device, described as a pipe-like device, made the man in his 30s nervous. It went off, injured his hands and his arms. He is expected to be okay. Authorities at first believe that this may be connected to the series of explosions that we've had in the city and around the city since the beginning of March, but they now say that there is no connection. At this point, there is no connection between this incident tonight, this incendiary device, and these bombs.
And there was a second incident, or supposed incident, a car fire in that particular area that had a lot of people thinking that there was a second device. That's what police were thinking as well, until they got a closer look at that incident, and there was not a second device in that area. We can say that now.
Jason Whiteley from our sister station WFAA reporting from the scene down there at Brody Lane, just reporting that one of the ATF command vans has left the scene. That is the scene of the Goodwill where that incendiary device was found earlier. We're also hearing that FedEx appears to have made a bit of a change in the way it delivers packages today, making sure that they get a signature from people before they leave a package. They will no longer leave a package, according to several people who have had FedEx deliveries today. So that would be a big turn of events based on today's situation unfolding in Schertz earlier today.
Tony, go ahead.
So I want to add this into the conversation. This is being tweeted by a reporter for the Texas Tribune who apparently just listened to an interview by Attorney General Ken Paxton. And he is quoting what Ken Paxton apparently just said in an interview, I believe, with Fox News. But Ken Paxton saying, this is a direct quote, the people on the ground that I'm talking to, some of my law enforcement officials, are telling me that it's not accurate, that they really believe this is the same bomber. So again, just more confusion.
I was going to say, we're hearing two different messages at
being
this time.
added into this.
Well, and you know, you know, we want to let you know that within the hour we have been told that authorities are going to be holding a press conference to hopefully clarify some of these things. But the fact that this is a different mode than the other incidences we're learning does not necessarily mean that it's not connected, because it started with packages that went to a tripwire, then it was a delivery through a delivery service. So, you know, well, it may not be out of the question that they could have gone a completely different way.
It is definitely not out of the question. In fact, Chief Manley reporting earlier today that the reason why they do not give out specific information about the packages that have been found and have exploded is because they were fearful that they would change. And in fact, that is what we saw happen right here in Austin. The first couple of devices were left on people's doorsteps for them to find the next morning, and they exploded. And then that fourth package was totally different. It had a tripwire, which was set out in a public area when somebody would just walk by to set it off. And so it's not unusual
in the Southwest versus the Northeast, where the others had happened.
It is not unusual for these situations to maybe change in their manner, and so it wouldn't be unheard of.
Remember when we spoke, Quita, with Fred Burton from Stratford, he was telling us, you know, profiling who he would think might be somebody who would be behind this, and he's saying
yes, I remember very
that
well.
This is a person, in his professional opinion, and he has a lot of professional experience in these sorts of things. This is a person who feeds off of the attention that he believes a man in his 30s to 40 years old, who feeds off of it, and who may be using maybe purposely changing it up so that he can get a different response. And so this might jive exactly with what you're talking about, Terry, just switching it up.
And we're hearing reports right now. My producer is telling me that she has gotten word that the victim in the Brody Lane explosion has been treated at the hospital and has been released. So that is excellent news. The victim, the man in his 30s that had suffered, I guess, injuries to his arms and his hands, he's been treated and has been released from the hospital tonight.
That's according to a spokesperson with St. David Hospital. So that is good news, you know, especially in light of the fact that we know that these can and have been fatal in 2 cases already.
That's right.
I think, you know, some of the concern from authorities in talking with Chief Manley and also hearing from UTPD's police chief today, you know, some of what they talk about is that there's concern that whoever is setting off these devices and putting them in place may actually be watching even some of the coverage, that there's some kind of kick they get out of seeing their work in action, so to speak. And so there is concern that these incidents will continue to occur. Chief Manley talking about today that he can almost guarantee there will be more based on what they've seen so far, that they fully expect that there will be more incidents to occur. And so the hope is that they can get enough tips and enough evidence from the situations that happened today to put a stop to it before they do.
And, you know, let's go live now to our own Jason Puckett. He is in our newsroom with a little more information and a verify that he's been working on tonight in regards to these events. Jason?
Yeah, guys, we have been just keeping track of some of the facts and questions out here. Want to do a bit of a recap right now using some of our verify elements here. So we have a list here of some of the claims that have been going on tonight set out there. Want to run people through where we are right now, catch them up a little bit. So as we have reported, this is being called an incendiary device. We can move that over into the verified. APD, ATF folks both confirming that this was an incendiary device, something meant to light something on fire, not an explosive itself. So we've also talked and heard about evacuations and lockdowns. We can verify again via APD, ATF, others at the scene that there have been evacuations of nearby stores and restaurants, as well as Bowie High School had a reverse evacuation, a reverse lockdown, excuse me. All the students went inside. We're told that this time Bowie has been released, so some of those are probably in the process now of being undone. You just heard Quita and folks saying that the victim in this case from Goodwill has been treated at St. David's. The rep there telling us they have been released after being treated there right now. Moving down to a couple other questions folks still might have if they're tuning in later. We initially spoke about a second device. We have since confirmed that that is false. There was not a second device at the scene, or at least not a second device that they're continuing to investigate. We initially heard reports of an explosion out in the area. That is what ATF and APD were responding to. That's also moving over into the false category. Again, this is an incendiary device in this case, something meant to light fire, start a fire, not actually explode. You see there in the middle, though, this copycat element. We've talked a lot about it. For a verify purpose, we're going to leave it in the middle right now as a up in the air, unverified question. The reason for that, while the ATF and folks have said they do not believe these packages were related to the package bombings, it is not clear just yet 100% that this was a copycat or someone else. That is information we'll have to wait a little bit longer to officially clarify. Folks, we're going to still be out here answering these questions. If you have any more, make sure you send them to news@kview.com so we can keep getting the answers about what's really going on here tonight. Back to you guys in the studio.
Jason Puckett, thank you so much with our Verify team, verifying some of the questions that you have tonight as we await a press conference. Austin police have set up the staging area near the Brody Lane location. You can see all of the media there gathered from around the country, really, here now, wanting to get the latest information on these devices.
And the bombings now attracting the attention of the White House. President Donald Trump spoke about the bombings a little bit earlier today during a White House press conference. Somebody had asked him if he knew what was going on here in Austin. He basically replied, and this is a quote, "This is obviously a very, very sick individual, and we will get to the bottom of it. Austin is a great place, a tremendous place. We have to find the people responsible immediately." So Donald Trump speaking about the Austin bombings at the White House today. It's definitely attracting the attention not only here in Austin, across the U.S., but across the world.
Well, and even Austin Police Chief Manley talking about how they are getting the resources needed to try to get to the bottom of this. They've sent in hundreds of federal agents to help solve this case.
More than 300 or so federal agents, yeah. and then other agents from different agencies. I mean, they're, you know, it's not for lack of trying. There are a lot of people who have their eyes on this and who are helping and assisting and using their expertise to do this. For those of you who may just be tuning in, we are following some breaking news this evening. Started around 7:20. A pipe-like device at a Goodwill on Brody and Slaughter tonight in the city of Austin. A worker there was injured when this device went off, injuring his hands and his arms. He was treated and released from the hospital, thankfully. That's good news about that victim. Authorities are still piecing it together. We've been told that they do not believe that this is connected to the string of bombings that we've had since the beginning of the month. But then we've been hearing from other sources, too, that they are possibly connected. Even though they're different, they may still be connected because, as we've seen, the other explosions that we've reported on have had differences, but authorities have ruled them to be connected.
That's right. And so far, I believe since, March 12th, Austin police have responded to close to 1,300 calls for suspicious packages and just people seeing something suspicious. And they will continue to do so if you call them. If you see something if you get a package on your doorstep that you weren't expecting, if you see a backpack lying around, or if you just see something that is suspicious to you, call 911. Austin police will come out there. They will check it, address it, make sure that it is safe, and they just want to keep the community as safe as possible right now.
It is hard to imagine the tragic path that we have been following in just the last 18 days. When this very first explosion, package explosion, happened on March the 2nd, killing that gentleman, Mr. House. Remember, authorities called it a homicide. Then they took it back because they weren't sure, and then there are other. I mean, it's almost mind-boggling to think from where we've come. You know, that authorities at first thought this was an isolated incident, didn't even know if it may have been an accidental explosion of some kind, and now we have, as the authorities are describing, a serial bomber on the loose in our area.
We believe the news conference is getting ready to start right now. In fact, it may be underway down there in Southwest Austin. Let's see if we can pull up that video.
We're hearing that.
I guess, okay. I'm hearing it's going to start at around 9:30 now. They're still setting up. Lots of crews out there. I know that APD is telling us now it will be starting at about 9:30. No word yet who is going to be speaking at this press conference. I would assume Interim Austin Police Chief Brian Manley will be there, as well as the figures from ATF, FBI that have been on the scene constantly around the clock here investigating the Austin bombings and explosions that have been happening.
I think it's kind of interesting to give people a little bit of the history too of the ATF and these explosive investigations. Since 1976, the ATF has been tracking explosive device incidents. But then in 2004, the Attorney General's office created the Bomb and Arson Tracking System. It's known as BATS. That's kind of the acronym for it. They have about 400,000 documents, patterns, trends of explosive devices that law enforcement agencies from across the country can have access to help pinpoint who may be putting these devices together, the trends that help them pinpoint where they may set off these devices. To help them get this information out. And so they say that this has helped them track down package bombs a lot faster than it was in decades past. That since 2016, there have been about 699 explosive incidents. And out of those 699, about 439 were bombings. That is an 11% increase from 2015. So again, a lot of incidents that we probably don't even hear about. And
we were discussing this in our meeting as well. You know, we have we were lucky enough to have journalists from across the country through our corporation, Tegna, helping us with this. And so we've got a lot of people researching a lot of different things. And we were discussing how, you know, that does seem like a lot, 400 or whatever, you know, in a year, but that could be anything, like something going off accidentally, or you know, a child with a firecracker, that type of thing. So not everything rises to the occasion that we've been seeing here, but still a large number nonetheless.
And I like what you were saying about the trends. They were able to look at the different trends. And for example, if they had a package bomb with a certain tripwire, they can catalog it, they can use it. And if they see a similar one, even 10 years later, they're able to match it to that particular suspect.
We want to be as transparent with you all as we possibly can during this entire process. We know we've been on the air a long time, and a lot of you have questions tonight. We are staying on the air because we know Austin Police is going to give us an update on the situation. And there's still a lot of people down there in Southwest Austin who live near this situation who are concerned about what happened, what transpired there tonight. And people all across Austin concerned because these devices continue to pop up. So we are staying on the air until we can get an update from Austin Police. If that means we stay on the air through our 10 o'clock newscast tonight, we will do that. We ask that you be patient with us as we try to provide the latest updated information that we can. We know it's frustrating for you. It's frustrating for our crews out there who get sent out to these scenes. It's got to be frustrating for the officers who get called out to situations that may or may not be connected, but this is their job. And so we want to keep you informed about what's happening so that you can keep your family safe.
It is really just that important. And as I look at these, and we're all looking here at these reporters waiting for the authorities to come to brief us on this latest incident, You know, I was a street reporter for more than 20 years. My first question would be, are these connected? And no matter what the answer, how do you know? You know, it's important insofar as it gives us, you know, are these connected to these other incidents? Is this the same person? Do we have a different person? Was that accidental? There's just so many questions here tonight with this case that I hope that they will be able to tell us. I think, you know, we have to assume they probably know by now, but they can't always, they have to withhold some information. So we're hoping that within the next 12 minutes or so, we will be able to know a lot more about the scope of what's going on here tonight.
And one thing I do have to say, Brian Manley, Chief Brian Manley, he has been very upfront with all of the information that he has been able to give to the media and to the public. Just being able to tell us different things about this investigation, about this case. And I know there's some information that authorities are unable to tell us because it could compromise the investigation.
Yeah, he had mentioned today specifically that they haven't released information about what the packages look like, what they may contain, for the reason that they believe the person doing this knows that information and only they know that information. And so as much as they can release information to keep you and your family safe, they want you to look out for suspicious packages, packages that you were not expecting, possibly backpacks, possibly bags left in areas that they shouldn't be. Even the device tonight at the Goodwill store. That worker did the right thing by notifying somebody saying they weren't comfortable with this situation. As we saw, something can happen. And whether it's connected or not, we need to remain vigilant in hopes of protecting people.
Exactly. And I know we spoke about this earlier, Terry. Make sure and talk to your kids as well. Because, hey, I sent a package to my niece and nephew. Didn't even think about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to be the ones to pick it up off the front porch.
Yeah, talk to your loved ones if you do something like that. Make sure they're aware. And again, call the tip line if you have any information that might help lead to an arrest. There's a $115,000 reward for information that leads to an arrest. The tip line 512-472-8477. And again, call 911 if you notice something suspicious.
And I'm getting word now that KVU's Molly Oak is out at the scene. She has a little bit more information for us out there, and let's see if we can get her up right now. And there's Molly. Molly, what can you tell us?
Well, we want to just give you an idea of how many people are waiting for this information. Andrew, if you can just zoom the camera out to show people just what we are waiting on right here. And as I check my watch, there should be any minute now. Really less than 10 minutes, Officer Blake with the Austin Police Department tells me we should be getting our latest update from them. Now, as I'm standing here, we obviously at a church, but just down the road, I can still see the red and blue lights from the scene. We were out there at Goodwill earlier, and I cannot tell you how many officers, and not even just police department, we saw the fire trucks as well. There was just a mass amount of lights that we were seeing. One man coming over me in the parking lot just asking what in the world is going on in Austin, Texas. And I think that's the sentiment we're feeling tonight from each and every one of these neighborhoods, whether that an explosion has happened in that neighborhood, it's happened near a neighborhood, or it hasn't even happened in their neighborhood. People are worried and they're just wondering what will happen next and fearing if another one will happen. Of course, we had that explosion happening at Goodwill. We know that one person was injured. We just got the update recently that he has been released. So that is good news on their side. Of course, the CEO of Central Texas Goodwill telling us that this is something that they have obviously need to take into account and continue working on. They closed all of their locations today, but that employee was sent over to the hospital. Of course, he was released earlier, but like I said, a lot of people responding, a lot of law enforcement working 110%, even more so than that, to make sure that this gets solved as quickly as possible. For now, we're gonna stay here at the scene and try to get the latest update from Austin Police Department. I'm gonna actually have to go here just to make sure I can get all that information and send it back to you guys. So stay with us here on air, online, and of course on our mobile news app.
All right, Molly, thank you very much. And the Austin Police Department should be starting that press conference in just a few minutes. They said it's going to happen at around 9:30, and we will bring that to you live as well.
Okay, so what we're hoping to find out from them and is to kind of recap what happened this evening, starting at around 7:15, 7:20 tonight, when some sort of pipe-like device went off in the hands of a Goodwill worker on Brody Lane near Slaughter. He was injured, treated and released from the hospital. And whether or not this has any connection to what we've been seeing since the beginning of the month with the bombings. We're not clear on that. We've been hearing conflicting information about whether there's a connection or not. But whether or not there is a connection, we do know that there was a massive police and authority force out there once this thing started going down. Here's just a little glimpse of it, but it was much bigger than that earlier this evening as well. So, it frightened people who live near there. There's an apartment complex there. There's a Randall's grocery store down the road who shut its doors once it realized that something was happening there. So, yeah, to say that people are on high alert within our area and specifically in that neighborhood tonight is an understatement.
I will say Dan Rather, who many of you know lives and has spent a lot of time in the Austin area, just tweeted out that tonight's Austin incendiary device explosion following the recent bombings increases edginess and worry. But, you know, this city's reputation is for steadiness. It has a tradition of staying calm, collected, and untied when it's being tested. And so he has every confidence in Texans. There's no history of panic and being panic prone. And I think that that's the, you know, that is the true sentiment for Austin. This is a community that takes a lot of care and concern for neighbors and prides itself on being a city but feeling like a small town. I think we look out for each other. We try to pay attention and we try to take care of one another. That is what really makes Austin such a great place to live and to work, and the 5th safest city in the country. And so the good news in all of this is that maybe it will make us all focus on some of that a little bit more. Maybe it'll make us think about those neighbors who we don't spend enough time with. Maybe it'll give people a chance to get to know the person who just moved in next door. Take time to focus on what's important and to take care of those near you. Pay attention to what's happening and to report things that do not look right.
Exactly. I mean, I've been here in Austin since 1982. I've grown up in this town. I love this town, and it saddens me. It makes me angry that this is happening, and I know so many others out there feel the same way. They want this bomber to be caught. They want this to stop. And I know Austin police and federal agents, that's exactly what they're trying to do. They are working day and night around the clock to try and bring this serial bombing reign of terror to an end.
All right. Well, and you know, we may have our differences, but when push comes to shove, don't mess with us, right? I mean, we do gather together as a community and do what needs to be done. And it is also great to see just the large extent of people coming from around the country to help us with this as well. That is much appreciated. But of course, the goal is to stop it and to figure out who's behind it and to bring that person or those persons to justice.
I think the scary thing for a lot of people today is hearing about what happened in Schertz, 20 miles northeast of San Antonio, 65 miles south of Austin, where a package exploded on a conveyor belt at a FedEx facility, injuring a worker there. Not seriously. She's expected to be okay. Obviously, I think her ears rattled by the explosion. But then a separate device found at a FedEx location in a different area. These all leading clues, possibly, to help locate the bomber who has been terrorizing this city since March 2nd.
Okay. So Tony Plohetzky is back with us now with some new information. Tony, what do you have?
So earlier we made mention to an interview that Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton gave on Fox News just a short time ago. The Attorney General of Texas providing very different information in that interview than what we have been told by ATF and other federal officials. Again, they have said that they do not believe that this, what has happened tonight at Goodwill, is part of the continuing series of explosions that have happened. the Attorney General, though, saying that he understands something very different from his law enforcement officials on the ground. Let's take a listen to what the Attorney General had to say.
So I know that there's been a lot of reports about this being a copycat, this one tonight at the Goodwill. The people on the ground that I'm talking to, some of my law enforcement officials, are telling me that that's not accurate, that they really believe that this is the same bomber.
So there wasn't much additional discussion around that in terms of the Attorney General providing more details about what exactly his officials are telling him, his law enforcement personnel are telling him. But that is very striking that he is saying something so differently than what federal officials and the Austin Police Department are saying that they believe has occurred tonight at this location on Brody Lane in South Austin.
What it may point out, though, Tony, too, is that, I mean, this is a fluid situation. I mean, information changes pretty quickly, and as investigators comb through the evidence, they may find different clues along the way.
That is absolutely true. But now the question is, well, is it or isn't it? You know, and
well,
I think
here's what we're going to find out in a little bit.
There you go.
We've got this gaggle of reporters out there waiting for the authorities to clear
who have had now 2 hours and 15 minutes to maybe get some additional information. So hopefully we will know something very soon from that.
The one thing I think that comes out of all of the events that happened, transpired since Sunday, is they're getting a bigger footprint of who may be responsible for this.
That's right. With each incident, there are new clues. There are new potential witnesses to talk to. There are new forensic clues. There is security footage of someone potentially going to a location. The size of the investigation expands, but when you get that, you also get more evidence that authorities can potentially use to link who was doing this and try to come up with the identity of a suspect, and then, of course, arrest that suspect and see that they see justice.
And you have to think that that device that they found that did not detonate near the airport is going to have some incredible investigative information that it's going to lend to it. So we can only see there. So we want to remind you we're continuing to wait for the authorities. They said 9:30. It's 9:30 now, but.
These things seldom start on time,
That's right.
as we know.
And you can see there's plenty of members of the media there from Austin, other cities across the nation as well, and also it looks like some concerned citizens are in the crowd.
Which again is a reminder of just how thirsty people are for information. People are very nervous about what is happening, and so they are, you know, in this case it looks like going to a news conference themselves to try to get information.
Which that in and of itself can hold an interesting clue sometimes in these cases. I know we've heard of cases where the person actually sending these devices shows up at these press conferences and that the officers want to see our footage.
Yeah, that's exactly true. They want to see footage we have of the people who were in the crowd watching the press conference. So, and it's something we have to remain cognizant of, like if there are people we don't recognize. Obviously in a situation like this, where you've got people from around the country who are now in Austin to cover the story, you're not going to recognize every face, but you know, sometimes you notice somebody who looks like they may not belong in there.
Or who may have been at a scene here and another scene here.
But you really never are clear what agency they're supposedly representing. So,
Tony, can you talk a little bit about, I mean, the devices that they have found, they do send off the materials to almost be pieced back together.
That's right. Think of it as a massive reconstruction. I mean, we've all seen after plane crashes that they actually piece by piece go about trying to reconstruct an airplane so that they can figure out maybe what went wrong. Well, in this case, they are doing something similar. You try to put as many of the pieces back together as you can. And here is one of the reasons that that is done. There's, of course, sort of the more scientific, forensic aspect of this, where they really kind of want to understand the mechanics of the device itself. But perhaps more importantly is that if they can establish, I'm going to use this as an example, specifically what kind of nails may be used or what kind of shrapnel may be used, you can then try to determine, well, are there specific places that sell those kinds of nails, or are those types of nails only available in a certain store? So then they can use that to try to gain information about the possible identity of a suspect.
You know, we were talking earlier, I'm just stuck on this, how the two different sets of authorities are saying different things about whether or not they're connected. And they did come to that conclusion pretty quickly. We've discussed earlier this evening that it didn't take them long to make the announcement that they did not think that there was a connection there. And so that could be, who knows what that means? It could mean that it's just so obvious to them from things they know that, of course, we don't know, that they're not connected, or maybe they jumped the gun. I don't know.
Yeah, I will say this just to add to the conversation. I don't know who's right or who's wrong in this case, or if the information has in fact changed over time. But let me say this. Let's go back to the very beginning of all of this. There has been a lot of criticism of the Austin Police Department, particularly early on, that the information that they distributed to the public was described as misleading or inaccurate, beginning on March 2nd and soon after March 2nd with the death of Anthony House, when police went public and said that they believe that this was an isolated incident and no ongoing threat to the public. I believe that since then, you can rest assured that the police are trying to be extremely careful about what they are releasing to the public. And Terry, you have asked about this several times, and I think it's a good point to once again mention that police and law enforcement are having to somehow strike the right balance between getting information out to the public as quickly as possible, particularly Austin police, who serve our community and who have bosses who are city administrators here and city council members here. They have them to answer to, and they have the community to answer to. So they are trying to balance getting information out in a timely fashion, as well as protecting the integrity of the investigation as well.
Because they can't release too much information because it can compromise even a possible court case. I mean, that's what the chief talked about, is that they have to, there are certain procedures they have to go through, they have to put steps in place, and they have to make sure all of that evidence stays in place so that they don't compromise a potential charge.
That's right. And as we've talked about a lot of times in these cases, at least is our press conference starting?
No, we have Attorney General Ken Paxton on the line. Mr. Paxton, are you there?
I'm here.
Let's get straight to it. You said on Fox News that your sources were telling you that there is indeed a connection between this incendiary device at the Goodwill and all of these other explosions in our area since the beginning of the month. Explain that. Do you still stand by that, or was that something that has changed throughout the night?
Well, so I've gotten two different sources. I've actually talked to Austin PD since I got off of Fox, and I also talked to some of our law enforcement people. I've gotten two different opinions. You might, after like that, you might have different opinions. One was what I said on Fox News, which is that it is definitely the same bomber, or at least there's very, very likely the same bomber. And then I've also had Austin PD. I just talked to the police chief. He still thinks that it is unrelated. So I don't know at this time what the right answer is, but I think we'll know soon.
Are you, how do you feel about how this situation is playing out in Austin? Are you concerned about the way this is being investigated and the fact that they have not made an arrest yet?
No, I'm not. I think you've got a lot of people involved in this. You've got over 500 federal agents, including 400 FBI and 100 ATF. You've got Austin PT doing their job. You've got people from my office involved. You've got other agencies involved like ATF, but I think we are getting close, and I do think this will resolve soon, because every time he's done something, it's provided more information to our law enforcement.
Was today a key in that, because there were incendiary devices that were found that had not been exploded?
Yes, I think that helps. That's very helpful, because those can be analyzed, and they can do a lot more with an unexploded device than they can with one that's detonated. So, yeah, I think that's going to be useful information. I think some of the surveillance video is going to be useful. There's just a lot going on here that, behind the scenes that I can't even talk about, that I think will be helpful in resolving this.
Mr. Attorney General, can you, it's Tony Plahetsky here, can you just describe what the role of your agency in terms of this investigation? We know that state officials are involved, federal officials are involved, as well as local authorities as well, but can you just talk specifically about the Office of the Attorney General, please?
Sure. It's complicated because you have so many different agencies involved, but we're part of a joint task force on terrorism. And while this may not be terrorism from the standpoint of, international involvement, it certainly is classified as domestic terrorism, if anything is. And so we're part of that task force, and we work with other agencies in resolving those type of incidences.
Attorney General, we're going to have to stop it right there. We've got the live press conference taking place in Southwest Austin, so let's listen in. Thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
The incident that has taken place on Brody Lane. And then I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Chief Eli Reyes.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. My name is Eli Reyes, E-L-Y-R-E-Y-E-S. I'm an Assistant Chief of Police with the Austin Police Department. And with me, I have Assistant City Manager Ray Ariano, as well as Assistant Chief Chris McElvain. Tonight at approximately 7 p.m., the Austin Police Department received a call that came through Travis County. The call was upgraded to a bomb hotshot call that occurred at the Goodwill in the 9800 block of Brody Lane. APD officers responded to the scene. Upon the initial investigation, officers determined that a Goodwill employee had found a box that someone had dropped out that contained some items that employee didn't think the Goodwill wanted to have. He had passed that box off to another employee who was told to dispose of the box. That employee took the box around the corner, and upon looking inside of it, it had two small devices that were artillery simulators that looks like some type of military ordnance or some type of memento. The employee handled one of those devices, at which time it initiated, and the employee sustained an injury. That employee was transported to the hospital, and he is doing well, and he is recovering. Of course, as you can imagine, with all of the incidents that have been going around in the Austin area recently, we responded to this with our EOD team, along with our federal partners from the ATF and FBI, to investigate this, just as we did all of the rest of the incidents that occurred in the city as an explosive device. After our investigation on scene, we did determine that this was not an explosive device. This incident is not related to any of the other incidents that we've had here in Austin. This was an old military type ordinance that initiated in this person's hand, and it did cause injury. There's no reason for us to believe that it is related to any of the other incidents that have occurred, and we're thankful that we got the response that we did. And we just want to reiterate to the community that if you see something suspicious, if you have a suspicious box, a suspicious package, that you continue to call 911. We are receiving a lot of calls about suspicious packages, and we want the community to continue to be vigilant and notify us of these packages as they come in. We will respond to every single one of these. We are fortunate that we are being aided by our federal partners, by other EOD units around the state and around the country that have come in to help with these calls. And we want everyone to know that if you see something, say something. We are in this together as a community. We want all of these incidents resolved, and we want them solved quickly, and we can do that together as a community with your help. With that, I can open up to any other questions about this incident here on Brody Lane tonight.
What happened with the car on fire on Slaughter? Will anyone face charges for this?
That's going to be part of the investigation. We will be reviewing the video footage at the Goodwill to determine who dropped the device off, if we can identify that person.
What happened to the car on fire on Slaughter?
Was it some type of flare?
There was a vehicle that did catch on fire there. It was not related to any other incident. It was a mechanical failure.
You believe they got off with a trail?
We have no reason to believe that this is an attempt at a copycat.
The Attorney General tonight indicated that he believed from his sources that this was connected, and said that on national television.
I can't comment on what the Attorney General said.
Does it seem like this was malicious, like they meant to harm someone, or they did not mean to harm someone?
That'll be part of the investigation, but I will let you know that a lot of times these military type mementos are found by family members and do not know how to dispose of these devices. So if you have a family member or you have something that you find in a garage that looks like a military device or a memento, please call 911 and we will send someone out to inspect it. And we have the equipment and we have the capability to dispose of these devices properly.
So, Chief, do you know who left the box?
We do not know who left the box.
What do you mean by an incendiary device?
Could you give us the rundown at this point about how many devices, how many have detonated, what the connected devices are?
I'm not going to discuss any of the other devices that we're investigating right now.
Do you think they used a trail to get away?
Can we say what the military devices actually were? Yeah.
These were about approximately 6 inches in length, almost like a 40-millimeter type artillery simulator device.
Last question.
Flare of some sort? Is it some sort of military flare, military memento?
It was an artillery simulator.
Thank you.
Do you know what the
Thank you.
image was? I mean, was it old or new?
No comment on the use of a trail?
Okay, you just listened to a live update from Austin Police on the situation that happened earlier tonight off Brody Lane at the Goodwill. Again, the device that was found there was said to be a military artillery simulator. Those can vary in size, but they tend to just set fire to something and simulate a fire. It is not believed to be related to the bombings. The worker that was injured was treated and released.